Good morning, everyone. For the record, this is January 26, 2022, and this is our bi-weekly agent-facing webinar series. And today we are going to be talking about the federal employee marketplace. So you have the honor and privilege of having a wonderful guest speaker on today. I won't talk about him too much, but because it's me. Our guest speaker unfortunately had an emergency to take care of, so I'm going to play backup fiddle. So we'll go through the information at a little bit more of a different high level, and this will be good for everyone to understand and get into. But as we're getting started, I like doing interactive webinars and making sure people are involved. So really quick, by a show of hands, I know that I've already got someone waving and saying hi. I'm going to lower all the hands for right now, but in the meantime, what I want to ask real quick, by show of hands, using the Zoom feature, who is familiar or with the federal employee marketplace as it is? So, and I'm not seeing any hands from anybody. So, oh, I got one person. Well, great. Then this may be some information that you already know. But for the most part, everyone else, as I kind of presumed, is not familiar with the federal employee marketplace. It is typically a marketplace that you are either in or you aren't. And so we're going to talk about some ways that from an independent agent perspective, some things that we can do to leverage that space and capitalize on our network, potential clients that we already have, and go from there. So let me jump into the presentation. Let's make this work. I'm going to stop sharing my video for right now so that we can focus on the presentation. Really quick, by a raise of hands, can you see the presentation that is in front of you? Make sure technology wakes. I've got everyone raising their hand. Thank you very much. So our focus today is, again, federal employee marketplace, and we're going to talk about three things. So we're going to talk about what is it? We're going to talk about how to get in it, and then we're going to talk about the resources and things like that you can use as well, that it's going to be beneficial. And I'll kind of save the part that makes this possible at the end, because before I jump into some of the information and talk about what is it and go through the rest of the content, the beginning piece of this is that the federal employee marketplace is very, very hard to get into in the first place. And that's what I mean by you're either in it or you're not for the most part, which is why so many independent agents are not familiar with the space and how they can leverage it and use it for themselves. As well as, I'm kind of getting my head of self a little bit, but the idea that there's a list that you have to get on to be able to be even, you have to represent a carrier, insurance carrier, to be able to get in the door to a federal employee marketplace. So this is why this field is typically someone that people have heard of. And real quick, another raise of hands, how many people outside of the one person that's already familiar with it, do you know, or anybody that's in the federal employee marketplace or have heard of other people getting in the space, or know of insurance carriers in that space? Does anybody, just for raise of hands, has anybody heard of that before, the federal employee marketplace and other agents getting into it? We have either everyone stopped participating or no one is familiar with it. So, or know someone that's in the marketplace. So this is going to be great for you to understand and be able to get, this is going to help you leverage some of the things that are there. So what is the number one question that we as agents are always asking? How do I get in front of more qualified prospects? So this is part of what that's going to do. And before we get into it, let me talk about perspective. So again, if you're looking for a new way to generate, looking for a way to generate new leads, this may be one area that you can utilize. So look at it within that perspective. There's also going to be network opportunities that even if you're, so we're going to talk about it in a couple different ways, but the federal employee marketplace of actually getting in and into the work site and doing it through payroll deduction and things like that. There's a way to do that side, but also this understanding the federal employee program and how it works and some of the language that's in it and where you can find that makes you more knowledgeable with clients that you're working with on an individual basis, not just in general of getting into the federal employee marketplace itself, but just working with federal employees, because there's terminologies and things that is solely things that they are familiar with that the rest of the working force is not familiar with, that there's terms that they do. So use this, and if you pick up on a few terms and concepts and ideas, then that is exactly what this for is as well. And then the last thing, which is something that we're not going to focus on, is the full-time focus. Is if there are people that their sole focus as an agent is working in the federal employee marketplace, and there's plenty of them that are out there. There's really not as many people that what we're talking about of that you're kind of dabbling or networking or getting into that space a little bit more casually. And there's ways to do that, but the reason that most agents don't is because they don't know how to go about it. They don't even know how to get access to it. They don't know the insurance carriers to use to be able to that are approved by the federal almanac. So this is why this is going to be great. So if you're looking for either of those four things, then this webinar is a webinar for you. And that's what we're going to go through. So let's just talk about what is a federal employee. I mean, I know this is pretty simple, but I'm going to give plenty of examples, and then you guys think of who do you know of that are in some of these places. But this includes politicians, judges, heads of departments such as labor and state. Federal employees can also be civilians who work government jobs in areas like law enforcement, public health, science and engineering. So there's federal organizations, there's unions and associations that work solely with federal organizations. So I'm going to real quick go to some of these lists so that you get an idea of what that looks like. But here is, if you're prospecting federal agencies, this is something to be aware of. These are some of the departments that you can target. So if you know anybody that works in these spaces, then they are a federal employee, and they work. There's some things about how their benefits work that is different. So agriculture, commerce, energy, health, Department of Interior, Homeland Security, Housing and Urban Development, Treasury, Veteran Affairs, Forest Services, those are all, and there's other ones on here, those are all federal employee and federal agencies. There's some tips in here, and I'm not going to go through them yet of how to get in of some of the things that they talk about, but these are all sheets that I'll make sure that everyone has. Everything that you're seeing will be sent out afterwards, as well as the recording. So those are some of the federal agencies. So let's go back. And then let's talk about list of unions and associations. So these are a lot of the unions and associations that you can get into that work with federal employees. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with any of these unions or associations, but Professional Airways System Specialist, National Association of Agricultural Employees, and National Education Association, National League of Postmasters. So those are all unions and associations that you can get into as well. And that's where a lot of these people are also. So really quick, let's see if we can do it by chat. When we go over those areas, and actually we'll do this one by raise of hands, real quick. All of those people that I just mentioned, those different federal organizations, unions, associations, can you think of anybody that you know that is that works for any of those places, whether it be a friend of a friend of a friend, an acquaintance, someone that you know on LinkedIn or Facebook? Do you know anybody that is a federal employee? All right, I'm seeing a bunch of hands raised up, so that's phenomenal. Not everyone has raised their hand, which means, like I said, you may not know someone directly off the top of your head, but this is part of the activity that is important of generating new leads, that you may know someone in your network, or you may know someone that may know someone that is a federal employee. And as we go through some of the language and understanding that, that is going to make you a better salesperson, to be able to talk with those people and be intelligent about what you're talking about with them. So that's part of the activity. What I want to do too is, I didn't mention this at the beginning, housekeeping. If you have, as we're going through this, if you have any questions, shoot them in the Q&A bar, and we'll make sure to address them as we're going along. But that's real quick. What is a federal employee? Those are the lists. You will get a list. You will get both those documents of the lists of federal organizations and unions and associations, so that you have them on top of your head. And if you think of anybody, that's part of what the importance of this activity is for. So that's what is a federal employee. Anybody that works at any of those places, they are considered a federal employee. So let's talk about then how we get in this marketplace. And I'm going to do a very oversimplification at the very beginning, and then we're going to take a deeper dive into it. But there's a big blank space here, and real quick, not by raising hands, chat bar, what do you think the number, if one word, it's one word, how to get in this marketplace, what do you think you're going to need to do or need to have to be able to get into the federal employee marketplace? Can anyone give me that one word? What do you think it is that's going to help you get into the marketplace? All right. Confidence. I like it. That's a great one, Katie. That definitely applies. All right. Licenses is absolutely true. That's good, Joseph. So this is, again, an oversimplification of what it's going to take to get into that marketplace, but it's relationship. To get into any of these marketplaces, and we're going to talk about how to do that in a second, you have to have a relationship with someone that is going to let you into the federal employee building, or do something on a, on one of their work sites or things like that. That is what it is going to take to get it done. You can't just walk in there. You can't just waltz in. You have to find a way and develop some form of relationship with the person, and then they are going to allow you in based on them knowing that you have the right credentials, that you have the confidence in what you're talking about and what you're doing, and that you understand their marketplace, because it is different than everybody else's, especially if you're going into the federal employee marketplace and doing a lunch and learns or things like that. And they are going to then do, they can do payroll deduction directly and pay for policies. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but let's talk about how to get in. And there's really five ways. So we have, first and foremost, is warm network. So if you know anybody, so right now, again, another raise of hands, how many of you know someone that works at the post office? Or how many times have you talked to your mailman or mailwoman? I mean, does anybody have a relationship with anybody at the post office? That's probably one of the easiest ones, because it's the most obvious. They're already out and about. We see them all the time. So those are all people that you can establish a relationship with and ask to get into their, what's called their postmaster, and allow them to for you to come in and have that discussion. So that's the number one way, is just tapping into your warm network. See if you have any clients. Hey, if you're talking about getting referrals from people, then you can go into some of the clients that you have and say, hey, I'm actually looking for anybody that you know that is a postal worker. Do you know anybody that's like that? And you can go down a couple lists of the other people. Do you know anybody that's like a firefighter or things like that? Those are some warm network ways and referrals to be able to build a larger list and get more leads, and something that you can easily educate yourself on about the federal employee marketplace and be able to talk intelligently and give them reasons why they should sit down with you. So number one is warm network. Number two is unions. I'm going to lump in unions and associations together, and we're going to go back to that sheet real quick. So this right here, and I know I'm giving a little bit of my thunder away right now. I was going to talk about this end, but you see American National. This is going to be important for us to talk about a little bit. But unions and associations, typically, they're very easy to get into if you support them with something. So here it is, and this, they say it best. So the support may be sponsoring a company picnic, donating to a college scholarship they provide to members' children, or simply paying for a booth at one of their national or regional meetings. Excuse me. Ensure that all sponsorship programs comply with the rules of the organization and are approved by them prior to proceeding. Do not engage in any activity that may be deemed as a pay-to-play situation. So also talking about with unions and associations, if you were to talk to some of these places and find out what's important to them and what they're donating to, or what upcoming event that they have, then you talk to the right person. You can either purchase a booth, you can do all the things that they're talking about. Those are very easy ways to get into unions and associations. Call them up, find them. Their numbers are super easy to find as long as you know the association or the union that you're looking for, and be able to talk to them intelligently right away. And I'll give you some places to look for and content and things as well. But that's really how to get into the unions and associations. It is something where you will have to pay to get in that case, but it's usually a minuscule marketing cost. And you end up, if you end up writing one policy from doing something like this, then you would have paid for what the cost was to be able to get into an organization like that. Now, outside of that, again, if you develop a relationship, sometimes you may not even need to do something like that or sponsor anything. It may just be a conversation. That's why the warm network one is of course ideal, because relationship trumps all of that. But that's the unions and associations. All right, so next one is lunch and learns. So again, this is, you're going to pay for lunch, and you have usually a very short period of time to do it in, but it's very simple. All you're getting approval is to do some kind of informational, educational seminar. And typically with lunch and learns, and like I said, I'll show you the materials to walk through to find out this information, but with lunch and learns, you're not talking about anything that you're doing. You're not, or what you're selling or anything like that. It is strictly you're coming in to educate them on their benefits, which is why there's, I'll show you a little bit later where to find that information to understand their benefits and how it works. But you're doing an education on what they're doing, and then through that, you're there, you develop relationships, and you can talk to them about other things afterwards. But what you're doing for the lunch and learn is education on how their benefits work. Because as another show of hands, how, just in general with the employee marketplace, raise of hands by yes, and if you don't raise your hands, then no. But by raise of hands, do you think that most employees know their benefits? I should probably see no one raise their hand. I had one person raise their hand. That's great. There are some. I would agree with that 100%. I see one hand raised. I would say for the most part, most employees do not actually understand the benefits and how they actually work. And especially for a large, as large of the as the federal employee marketplace is, there's a lot of them that don't understand how that works. their information is there from the view, but they usually don't view it. And that's why doing these lunch and learn events and providing that education is something that people like Postmasters and unions and associations and all that stuff are interested in, because it allows them their employees to get more information and understand the benefits that they currently have. So lunch and learns are great. Typically, like I said, it is on their benefits, and then you're doing stuff afterwards with them as well. The next one is getting access to, and the last one that's on here is getting access to work sites. So all that means is, and I'm going to use the postal office one the most because, like I said, it's the easiest and the one that is the easiest to find. So work sites is anywhere, any federal building, basically, and allowing you to come into the work site, whether in a lunchroom usually or a hallway. You set up a table, and on their breaks, this is the important part of the work sites, is on their breaks, you're able to talk to them shortly about, the benefits that you offer and the difference between what they have and what you have to offer and things of that nature. So again, that everything that's on here still needs approval if you're going through the federal, if you're trying to do payroll deduction and things like that. If you're just trying to get relationships and things of that nature, then it's not as big of an approval that you have to go through. You can of course talk to federal employees and earn their personal business. But if you're actually trying to get into the federal employee marketplace and get some more sales and have it directly within their from their pay, then you have to get approval first to be able to have those discussions. But work sites is another big one. And like I said, usually it's a lunchroom or a hallway or something like that. You set up a table, and the goal is that you're not disrupting work. So you need to keep conversations short. But it's very super simple. You can go over the difference of what they're doing, what they have, and what you have access to, which a lot of times is a heck of a lot better. And then you can still do it through the payroll deduction system. And that makes a big deal of persistency, because federal employees typically stick around for a long time. And even if they move to a different job, still as a federal employee, then like I said, they're still within that system. So that makes a big deal. And work sites are a great place. So where to find them, how to get in, 5 things: warm network, unions, associations, lunch and learns, and work sites are the most popular. And the ones that have been most effective in this marketplace. All right, so now I want to go over resources, because there are some things that are on here that are really important for us to talk about, of finding out how does the federal employee marketplace work, what's going on with it. So first and number one, and this is what makes all of this even possible, is American National. So really quick, Anaco, American National, same thing. Who is familiar with American National as a carrier? All right, I'm seeing a few people raise their hands. Not a lot of people. Well, American National is insurance carrier, been around for a long time, of course, A-rated carrier. The reason that American National is so important is because, you see what I mentioned down here, the Federal Employee Almanac. For you to even get into any of these work sites and be able to have those conversations and do payroll deduction stuff, you have to work with an approved vendor that is on the Federal Employee Almanac. And so American National is one of the few insurance carriers, and to my knowledge, one of the only insurance carriers that provide an independent broker contract. There are plenty of other places that do offer that are in the almanac, but most of them, for example, I think one of them, oh gosh, it's a final expense shot, and I just blanked on it. I apologize, but not Lincoln Heritage, I believe. Maybe it might be Lincoln Heritage, but there's some other captive agency shops that are on the Almanac as well, and they are specifically going after the federal employee marketplace. Typically, and this is why American National is so important to mention, is in the federal employee marketplace, because there's an approved list, and you have to be on the Federal Employee Almanac to be able to sell products within worksite and through payroll deduction and things like that. American National is one of the only carriers that offers an independent contract to be able to do so. So by having American National in your back pocket, you are now able to talk to that federal employee and get to a little bit larger audience if you can get into some of those, you do lunch and learns, work sites, talk to the unions and associations, leverage your relationships and things like that to get into have those conversations. And American National's products, comparatively to what they have offered in within the benefits of the federal employees, is a lot better product than what they currently have. So I'm going to go through a few things with the microsite information and some differences, but other things that I want to mention is American National Sales Desk. So this is a marketplace that they are in. They do a little over $10 million of business just in the federal employee marketplace alone. They're familiar with it. They know it. They have materials on it. We're going to go through them in a second. But that's the number to their sales desk. You can have conversation about the federal employee marketplace and things like that. The next one that I already mentioned is the Federal Employee Almanac. So this is something that it's not hard to find online. Sometimes you have to purchase it, but you can usually get a PDF version and stuff like that. And the Federal Employee Almanac shows that if you're representing American National, that American National is in the Almanac. So that gives you the validation right away. Now, note that if you're getting into the work sites in the federal employee marketplace, you are not mentioning any other carrier besides American National. If you're doing personal business, like, it's not payroll deduction, it's not through any of that, then it doesn't matter, of course. You can sell whatever you want to a federal employee. But going through the system, American National is the carrier that we have access to that is able to do that. The next one is the Freedom of Information Database. So you can just Google that, and it has a whole bunch of different information. It's not going to have things like names, individual names and phone numbers and addresses and stuff like that. What it is going to have is more information about, income for different postmaster places or federal employees and how much they make and what kind of positions they have and a whole bunch of different statistics. And there's a lot of information that can be used on there as well. And I'll show you how to use some of that as well. But those are kind of the 5 materials. And then the next thing is the microsite. And this is what I want to spend a few minutes going through, because this is where you'll be able to pull a lot of the information. So let's go over to the microsite, and then we'll have some time for some questions and go from there. But again, this is a little oversimplification of that marketplace, but this is a good thing to know about. And there are some things that you'll pick up on very quickly as I go through this that would help you be very familiar with that marketplace. So there's a lot of information on here. This is something that you do not need a login to get access to. But if you're looking for the federal employee marketplace, what you're going to do is going to go to agent resources. So the website is up here. And I think, let me double check something. Let's see. If you just go to AnikaWeb.com to make it simple. Then that's what should pull up. So what you're looking for then is you go to agent resources and then worksite. So very simple. Just go to agent resources under life insurance. You see worksite. And this is going to go over the all of the information about the federal employee marketplace. So really quick terminology. This is what you're basically typically replacing is FEGLI. So that's the Federal Employees Group Life Insurance. So if you don't pick up on anything else today besides that terminology, the Federal Employees Group Life Insurance, the acronym is FEGLI, then that's the life insurance, the group life insurance benefit that federal employees get. And they have, I'll show you where you can find exactly how that works and compare it to what you have access to on your on our side, and you'll notice a big difference. So they talk a little bit about that. FEGLI, the cost of this program increasing every 5 years, and things like that. They talk about list bills and things of that nature, but here are the materials on this side. So first off, getting started in the federal employee marketplace. This is a really great one. So it's 8 pages, super simple. It's going to come, it's specifically goodness gracious, going to go over the FEGLI and how it works. So you get to see the cost breakdowns and the increase in the costs, places that you can go to get access to those, to the people to talk to. And this is where we talk about lunch and learns, work sites, Freedom of Information Act database. This is going to be a really useful tool for you to understand, and the sales desk can help you walk through a lot of this information as well. If you want to take a deeper dive into it. Literally, if you walked through everything that they talked about, you would be able to get into the federal employee marketplace yourself with American National, as representing American National. All right, so that's getting started. So these are the documents of the prospecting. I'm going to send you all of this as well in the email. But these is where I pulled all that. This is where I pulled all that information from. Same thing, prospecting tool talks about those unions and associations. Here's the consumer piece. So here are some questions that you should understand and know about that if you were to ask some of these questions. So for example, this is from a consumer standpoint, do I know what I currently pay for basic FEGLI coverage? What does optional FEGLI protection cost me? Is it possible to get the same amount of protection for less than I'm paying now, or can I get additional coverage without increasing my current premium? These are all things just about the benefits and what they have access to. So if you understand some of these questions, you can take some of these questions and ask any federal employee about it, and they'll understand what you mean by FEGLI. And that will also increase your expertise just by using that terminology. That's the consumer piece. And then the other ones are, the deduction agreements and things like that. But if you just went through those aspects and then also got the Federal Employee Almanac, then that would give you all the information that you need to know and understand about the federal employee marketplace to have a very simple and easy conversation about what that marketplace looks like. And again, you look like the expert, you have a great conversation, and then you can get into and either get their personal business or also then talk intelligently enough to get into the work site or do a lunch and learns and things like that. So I know that was a very, a little bit of an oversimplification of the process. One of the other times I will, like I said, there was a guest speaker that we have on, but unfortunately he had an emergency to deal with. And we'll have him on another time and go through this in a little bit different perspective of someone that's actually in the marketplace selling to federal employees, But this gives you enough information that if you're looking for ways to generate more leads, looking for ways to get into that marketplace, or tap into the network that you currently have, this is something that would be great for you to know about, and American National is going to help you every step of the way. So with that said, are there questions that you have right now about the federal employee marketplace or American National or anything like that? I'll take a few moments on that aspect, but American, that website that I went to here, of course, it also has the breakdown of all their products. So be aware of that as well. They have some, and American National is a great product line. I'm not going to go through all of them right now, any of them right now, but if you're not familiar with them, check them out. And again, this is for every single, so that's good to mention, every product that you see on here, all of them can be used for federal employees. So that's one of the big differences as well with FEGLI. It's, you know, it's just a group term life insurance, whereas with American National being an approved carrier, you have access to sell through payroll deduction the entire product line that American National has, whether it be term or permanent. Based what I was talking about with our American National rep is 70%, about 70% of the $10 million that they did last year in the federal employee marketplace is permanent life insurance. So that's a big deal on that side as well. So if you can get it in the marketplace, you're more than likely selling a permanent life insurance policy to them through payroll deduction, which the persistency on those is really, really great. And you can do that direct comparison of FEGLI versus an American National product. And they're going to have a lot more portability, control, benefit, and sometimes costs, depending on, of course, you know, age and things like age and health and things of that nature. But this is the website to go to for all that. I'm going to send all of this in an email, but in the meantime, as we wrap up, any questions? So Tim asks, how does someone represent themselves to the employee groups as an American National representative or an American National agent? Honestly, either one. So I've talked with the team. You are you can either be a representative or an agent of American National. It doesn't matter language wise. The important piece of the conversation is that you are are representing that you're an agent of American National. But either one of those terminologies works for getting into the marketplace. Your name is not the one that has to be on the Federal Employee Almanac. The carrier does, and then you represent that carrier. Now, one of the things I will say before you go into that, I would highly recommend getting a contract with American National first, because not every, like Illinois is not a state that works like this, but most states, you can actually even have a printout of your license and the carriers that you represent. So if you have American National with a contract already, then that is a verification that you are an agent or a representative of American National. So if you're deciding to do that at all, I would get contracted with American National first, because then you're in the database, you have a writing number. Anybody can verify that then very simply. And you can prove that also very simply. So I would recommend that. But any other questions on that end or about the federal employee marketplace? Well, awesome. Well, I'm going to get all this information over. Just so that a little plug for the next agent-facing webinar that we're going to be doing, not next week, but the week after. we are going to be talking about the Washington CARES Act and how that had impacted the state of Washington and how that's impacting the long-term care marketplace, and some of the potential rulings and things that are coming in the pipeline, either from a state legislation in other states like California and Illinois and other places, or also there are some talkings and some things on the federal level that is could potentially radically change the long-term care marketplace. So definitely be register for that one. We'll do that one in 2 weeks, and that's going to be an exciting one as well. But I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes since we're ending a little bit early. If anybody has any questions or comments, would love to address them here, or if I can point you right the direction. Like I said, American National, phenomenal. Like if you have any questions, I would honestly go to them first, because this is the market. This is a marketplace that they're in. They'll be able to answer it the best way possible. But I'm going to hang out for just a minute or two, see if there's any other questions, but everyone will get an email with all of this information later this afternoon, as well as the recording for the webinar. So I appreciate everyone's time. If anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Like I said, I'll hang out for a minute or two to see if anybody thinks of anything else for that marketplace. As everyone's jumping off, just start thinking about those people that you may know, or that people may know, that is a federal employee that is in that marketplace, because this is an easy way to have that conversation and know that terminology. But with that said, it doesn't look like anybody else has any other questions. So I will end the recording. You all know where to find us. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk with everyone soon. Talk to you later.